There are moments in life when the soul becomes very still. Not because nothing is happening, but because something so significant is moving beneath the surface that the ordinary noise of daily existence can no longer drown it out. You may have experienced this kind of stillness recently. A quieting inside you that arrives not from peace, but from a deeper knowing that something important is unfolding just beyond what your eyes can currently see. You did not imagine this feeling. You were not being dramatic when you sensed that the energy around a particular connection had shifted. You were not overreacting when you noticed that something was being kept from you. Heaven has not brought you to this moment by accident, and the words now reaching you are not arriving too early or too late. They are arriving precisely when your soul is ready to receive them. The truth that has been hidden from you is not a small thing. It is not a minor detail that someone forgot to mention or a casual omission that carries no weight. It is the kind of truth that has been carefully guarded, deliberately kept behind closed doors, and surrounded by silence because the person holding it is afraid of what happens the moment it steps into the light. Your special person knows this truth. They have been living with it pressed against their chest for longer than you realize, and the weight of carrying it has been accumulating with every day that passes without honesty. Here is what they have not told you. On August 3rd, a wedding is being prepared. A date has been chosen, arrangements have been made, and people who exist in your special person's life are already aware that something significant is approaching. Conversations have taken place in rooms you were not invited into. Plans have been discussed with people who know your special person well. And throughout all of it, your name has been conspicuously absent from those conversations, not because you are unimportant, but because you are too important. Your special person has kept you away from these discussions because they are not entirely sure what will happen to their own composure the moment your name enters the room where this wedding is being planned. They fear you. Not in the way that suggests you have ever been unkind or threatening, but in the way that speaks to how deeply a person can be moved by a connection they have tried and failed to release. They fear what you represent, which is the version of themselves that felt most alive, most honest, and most fully seen. They fear that speaking to you, even once, with complete honesty would unravel everything they have tried to construct. So they chose silence. They chose distance. They told themselves that absence would eventually become its own answer, that you would move forward, that the connection would dissolve naturally without requiring a difficult conversation. But the heart does not work according to the plans the mind makes for it. For some time, you noticed changes. The messages that once arrived with warmth and frequency began arriving less often, and when they did come, they felt shorter, more guarded, almost careful in a way that felt unfamiliar. The depth that once existed in your communication seemed to have been replaced by something shallower, something that felt like your special person was speaking to you from behind glass. You felt the distance without being able to name exactly what caused it. You may have wondered whether you did something wrong. You may have replayed conversations, searching for the moment when something changed, trying to identify the word or the silence that created the shift. You may have reached toward them in small ways, hoping to recover what felt like it was slowly slipping away, and found that your reaching was met with responses that were polite but no longer warm in the way that once made your entire being settle. Your intuition was not inventing trouble. Your instincts were receiving accurate information from a situation that was genuinely changing around you. Someone else had entered the picture, or at least the idea of someone else had been entertained seriously enough to move toward a commitment. Your special person was in the process of making a decision that would affect your connection, and they were making it without including you in any part of that conversation. The person they have been moving toward appears, on the surface, to represent everything that looks correct. There is perhaps family approval attached to this connection, the kind that comes when relatives see someone and decide almost immediately that this is suitable, that this makes sense, that this is the kind of choice that can be celebrated publicly without complication. There may be practical compatibility, shared circumstances, common expectations about what a life together should look like. Friends may have expressed enthusiasm. The arrangements themselves may carry all the appearances of something genuinely beautiful, the kind of occasion that photographs well and receives congratulations from everyone who hears about it. But heaven sees into the spaces that appearances cannot reach. When your special person imagines the moment they will stand beside this individual and speak words of permanent commitment, there is no flood of the happiness that should accompany such a sacred threshold. There is instead a strange hollowness that they cannot explain away no matter how many logical arguments they offer themselves. They have tried to reason with this feeling. They have told themselves that deep, breathless love is perhaps too unstable a foundation for a life, that something steadier and more predictable is wiser, that affection can grow with time and shared experience even if it does not arrive fully formed from the beginning. They have rehearsed these arguments so many times that some of them have begun to sound almost convincing. But then comes the quiet. In the moments when there is no distraction available, no conversation to fill the space, no task demanding attention, the quiet arrives, and inside it is a voice that has never agreed to the arguments your special person has been rehearsing. This voice does not shout. It does not make demands. It simply speaks your name. It brings forward a memory of something specific, the way you once responded to something they said, the way you sat with them during a moment that did not require any words, the way your presence made them feel less like they needed to perform and more like they were simply allowed to exist as they genuinely were. No amount of planning or practicality can silence that voice entirely, because it is not coming from a place that reason built. It is coming from a place that only genuine connection can create, and genuine connection does not disappear because someone has decided it should. The person your special person is preparing to marry may not be aware of any of this. They may be approaching August 3rd with a genuinely open heart, carrying real hope for the future they believe they are building together. They may look at your special person and see someone who has chosen them, without knowing that the choosing was complicated, that it was made in the shadow of another connection that was never properly resolved, that it was influenced significantly by fear. Heaven does not ask you to feel anger toward this individual. They may also be standing in the middle of a situation that was never fully honest with them, and they deserve honesty as much as anyone. This is important to understand about your special person's journey to this decision. They did not arrive here because their love for you vanished. Love of the kind that existed between you does not simply vanish. It may become buried under choices and silences and the daily accumulation of distance, but it does not disappear. Your special person moved in this direction because at some point, fear became louder inside them than love was. The fear had many faces. There was the fear of vulnerability, of opening themselves completely to a connection as powerful as the one they experienced with you and finding themselves undone by it if something went wrong. There was perhaps the fear of repeating pain from earlier in their life, wounds from before they knew you that never fully healed and that made the idea of deep emotional exposure feel dangerous rather than beautiful. There may also have been external pressure of the kind that rarely announces itself clearly but is nonetheless very powerful. The quiet expectations of family. The unspoken understanding of what a successful life is supposed to look like by a certain point. The fear of disappointing people whose approval matters. The desire to appear settled and certain and moving forward in ways that others can recognize and celebrate. Your special person wanted to be seen as someone who had made a responsible choice, and so they moved toward the choice that looked most responsible from the outside, even while their inner life told a completely different story. They chose what appeared correct on paper, hoping with great sincerity that their heart would eventually follow. They believed, or tried to believe, that if they committed fully in action and in public declaration, the feelings would arrange themselves accordingly. That love would become obedient to decision. That the part of them still connected to you would recognize the finality of the new choice and gradually release its hold. The heart, as it turns out, does not become obedient to decisions. It continues to tell the truth no matter what arrangements have been made around it. As August 3rd draws nearer, your special person's private experience is becoming increasingly difficult to manage. They may appear composed and even happy in the presence of others. They may smile at the right moments and respond appropriately to the excitement around them. But the private hours tell a different story. Sleep requires effort that it should not require. There is a restlessness that arrives particularly in the late hours, a kind of mental circling that keeps returning to the same questions no matter how many times they are pushed aside. Their phone becomes something they look at with a complicated mixture of hope and dread, wondering whether your name will appear there, wondering what they would do if it did. Old conversations get revisited in memory. Images they claim to have let go of reappear. There is a kind of internal replaying that happens when the mind is working through something it has not yet resolved, and your special person is doing a great deal of this replaying. They return to specific moments. The ones that felt like they had particular weight. The exchanges that made them feel understood in a way that does not happen often. The silence between you that was never uncomfortable because it was full of something real rather than empty of something necessary. They have begun composing messages to you in their mind. Sometimes these compositions make it as far as their phone screen before being erased. They start and stop, start again and stop again, because they cannot find the words that accurately carry what they are trying to say, and because they know that once certain words are spoken, the neat arrangement of everything they have been constructing will begin to come apart. They want to know whether you still think of them. They want to know whether what you once felt has survived the silence and the distance. They are afraid of discovering that it has not, and they are perhaps even more afraid of discovering that it has, because that discovery would force them to face a truth they have been avoiding with extraordinary dedication. My beloved child, this revelation is not being given to you so that you will rush toward them or insert yourself into a situation in ways that are not yours to enter. Love obtained through pressure does not hold. A relationship that begins because someone was persuaded or cornered or made to feel guilty for what they almost chose will not carry the peace and solidity that you deserve. If your special person is going to come to you, they must come freely, honestly, and with a full understanding of what their coming means and what it requires them to take responsibility for. Anything less would be the beginning of another situation built on incomplete honesty, and you have already experienced enough of what incomplete honesty costs. You deserve to be chosen openly. Not as a secret kept in someone's heart while their public life moves in a different direction. Not as the name they whisper in private while someone else receives the public declaration. Your heart is not a place to which someone may return only when the fear of their other choices becomes unbearable. You are not a backup plan. You are not a consolation. You are not someone to be picked up and set down according to what is convenient for another person's emotional management. If they come toward you, they must come having done the difficult work of honest reckoning, having spoken clearly to the people whose lives would be affected by their truth, and having chosen you not out of panic or last-minute doubt but out of a genuine, clear-eyed understanding of what their heart is actually asking of them. There is something significant about the timing of what is now unfolding. The approaching date of August 3rd is functioning in your special person's life the way a mirror functions. It is reflecting something they cannot look away from, which is the reality of what they are about to do and the reality of what remains unresolved inside them. The closer this date comes, the harder it becomes to pretend that everything is as settled as it appears from the outside. The decision that once seemed manageable when it existed only as a future possibility is now becoming imminent reality, and that imminence is stripping away the comfort that future thinking provides. They are being forced, by the approach of this moment, to confront the difference between what they are prepared to perform and what they are genuinely able to give. There is a growing awareness that promising forever to someone while emotionally connected to another person is a form of incompleteness that would be unfair to everyone involved, including themselves. A wedding ceremony is a sacred thing. Words spoken in that kind of ceremony carry a weight that is not diminished by the fact that they are spoken under circumstances of internal confusion. Your special person is beginning to understand this with a clarity they were not ready for when this whole arrangement began. Heaven asks you, in the midst of all this unfolding, to remain centered within yourself. The revelation of a date, of a secret, of someone else's complicated heart should not become a reason for you to put your own life into suspension. August 3rd is a point on a calendar. It is not an authority over your destiny. It is not a sentence being passed upon your future. It does not have the power to determine your worth or to write the final word about what love will look like in your life. You must not spend the days between now and then watching a clock or refreshing a phone screen or living in a state of held breath, because that kind of waiting diminishes you, and you do not deserve to be diminished. Continue building your life. Continue the work of your own healing and growth. Continue maintaining the peace that you have worked to establish inside yourself, because that peace is genuinely yours and it does not have to be surrendered to someone else's timeline or someone else's unresolved decisions. You are allowed to exist fully, richly, and with hope, regardless of what any particular person chooses or fails to choose. This does not mean that feeling deeply about this situation is wrong. Your feelings are real and they are yours and they do not need to be dismissed or minimized. But feelings can be held alongside continued living. You can carry tenderness for what this connection meant, and hope about what it might become, while simultaneously refusing to let either of those things become the ceiling of your daily existence. Something may shift before the date arrives. A conversation that creates an opening where there was previously only silence. A moment of confession that surprises both the person speaking and the people listening. A disagreement that cracks the surface of something and lets in light that had been kept out. A realization that arrives at an unexpected moment and refuses to be reasoned away any longer. These things happen. They happen because human hearts are not as controllable as human plans, and because truth has a way of finding its way toward the surface no matter how carefully it has been weighted down. Your special person may finally reach the understanding that the bravery required to live honestly, even when honesty is costly and complicated and disappointing to people they love, is less damaging in the long run than the slow erosion of living a life built upon what remains unspoken. They may come to see that protecting everyone from a difficult truth is not actually protection. It is simply a delay of the moment when the truth arrives anyway, having now gathered interest in the form of additional hurt and additional complication. There is also a deeper dimension to what is being revealed to you, something that your mind may have been circling without quite reaching its center. The situation has not been entirely as it appeared from the outside. Not every detail of what is being arranged has been presented in its full clarity. There are layers here that the surface story does not show, conversations that have been happening in directions you were not able to see, decisions being weighed in the private hours when no one is watching, fears being faced that were too tender to be exposed to any outside observation. Your special person has been navigating something far more complex than simple betrayal. They have been struggling against the accumulated weight of what they were afraid to want, what they felt they were not allowed to choose, what seemed too uncertain and too exposing and too far outside the boundaries of what felt safe. They have been fighting, in their own imperfect and often counterproductive way, with the understanding that the life they are expected to step into is not the life their soul is actually asking for. They have been afraid that naming this understanding too soon, before they had addressed the obstacles in front of them, before they had found the courage to face the resistance they knew they would encounter, would destroy the possibility before it had any chance to become real. Their silence was not simple cowardice, though it was certainly not wisdom. Behind that silence, something was genuinely moving. A reckoning was taking place. A slow turning toward honesty that has been painful in proportion to how long the dishonesty was allowed to stand. The person your special person truly loves is not someone separate from your story. It is not a mysterious stranger who arrived after you and claimed what you believed was yours. The person for whom their heart remains open, quietly and persistently, in spite of every arrangement that was supposed to redirect it, the person whose name arrives in the stillness, the person they imagine when they allow themselves to imagine freely rather than practically, the one whose understanding of them felt like being genuinely known rather than simply observed, is you. August 3rd is not destined to be the day when you lose something finally and completely. It may instead be the day when something long held in confusion begins to become clear. Not because circumstances will arrange themselves neatly without any difficulty or pain, but because the truth has been building pressure behind the silence for long enough that it is becoming impossible to contain. And truth, when it finally moves, does not move halfway. What this means for you, in practical terms, is not that you should wait passively for someone else to arrive at your door with their honesty finally prepared. It means that you should know your own worth well enough that you are not available to be anyone's secret or anyone's regret or anyone's unfinished emotional business. It means that if someone comes to you, they must come having done the difficult work. It means that you are allowed to require honesty, clarity, and genuine accountability from anyone who asks for your heart, regardless of how long you have cared for them or how deeply the connection between you once ran. Your special person still has choices to make. The love inside them does not make those choices automatically or instantly or without great personal cost. They will have to decide whether the life that looks correct from the outside is worth more to them than the life their soul is genuinely asking for. They will have to decide whether the courage required to choose honestly, in the face of all the complication that honesty will create, is something they are capable of finding. They will have to decide whether you are someone they will choose openly and completely, or someone they will continue to carry in silence while their public life goes in a different direction. And you will have to decide what you will accept, what you will require, what you will offer, and under what conditions, and with what clarity about your own non-negotiable dignity. You have the right to decide all of these things for yourself without waiting for anyone else to first determine your value. You have the right to a love that does not require you to make yourself smaller or more patient or more understanding of someone's fear than you are of your own need to be genuinely chosen. You have the right to stand exactly as large as you are and to require that anyone who loves you meet you at that height with their own full presence. Heaven sees the whole of this situation. Not just the surface arrangements, the dates and the invitations and the conversations in closed rooms, but the truth that runs beneath all of it, the genuine emotional landscape of a person who has not yet been fully honest with themselves or with you, and the extraordinary patience of a heart, yours, that has continued feeling its way toward something real even in the absence of clear confirmation. You were not wrong to feel what you felt. You were not wrong to sense the connection. You were not wrong to notice the distance or to wonder about its cause. You were not wrong to believe that something between you remained unfinished. And you are not wrong now, in receiving this truth, to feel the full weight of what it means. Let that weight move through you without becoming the thing that controls you. Let the knowing of this situation inform your choices without consuming your peace. Let the love you have carried be acknowledged as real and significant without allowing it to become a prison that keeps you from fully inhabiting your own life. You are not someone to be kept waiting while someone else figures out their courage. You are someone who deserves a love that arrives with its whole self, its honesty and its bravery and its willingness to be seen choosing you in front of everyone, not because the choosing is convenient but because it is simply and completely true. The story between you and this person is not over. But how it continues, and whether it continues in the direction of something genuinely whole and honest, depends on choices that are yet to be made. Heaven has brought you this truth not to fill you with anxiety or longing or the need to act immediately, but to ensure that when the moment comes, you are standing in your full knowing rather than in confusion. You now understand what has been happening. You now understand what is at stake. You now understand that the silence around you was not evidence of indifference but evidence of a fear so large it temporarily swallowed the love that was also present. Go forward from this moment with your eyes open and your heart guarded not by walls but by wisdom. Know what you deserve. Know what you will require. Know that the love that is truly meant for you will not require you to diminish yourself in order to receive it. And trust that the truth, now that it has begun to move, will find its way toward exactly where it is supposed to arrive.